And we'll actually do like a quick look in case some of you haven't seen it. So this is what's coming tomorrow, right? We're getting 2 Soulbound Champions, which are Senna and Lucian. And then we're getting Amumu. These are getting added to the unit pool. So the 2 Soulbound units are the only 2 Soulbound. They basically read, when the first one dies, instead it will continue fighting as an untargetable spirit until the other Soulbound Champions are dead. Now, there are only 2, but it reads Soulbound Champions because theoretically, if you're running a build that has like 2 Lucian, 2 Senna, right, which is kind of, I'm not going to lie, it's kind of what I want to experiment with. I want to play around with the idea of running 2 stars of each. Then it makes it so you essentially have to kill all 4 before you get rid of them. Senna's a tier 2 that is Shadow and Soulbound, and has a really interesting ability as far as like how you position her, because she fires a beam through her furthest ally, and then it deals magic damage to enemies that it passes through, and it buffs allies that are hit for 5 seconds to deal bonus magic damage that comes from Senna. So it's interesting because it sounds like she pairs best with assassins, right? Where you would theoretically have like her in one corner and having your assassins jump to the opposite corner so that she'll shoot through the entire field. But like, I think positioning her correctly will be a bit of a challenge. Lucian is a tier 4 unit that is light and soulbound. And his ability is his ult from League gets the culling. So he fires 10 plus 2 times his attacks per second. So basically he just fires a machine gun of bullets in a direction over 4 seconds. They deal a percentage of his attack damage, but the key thing in my opinion is they apply on hits, and then they also deal additional magic damage. So I think Giant Slayer and things like that will be fun on him. And then the last unit we're getting is Amumu, which is designed to help Inferno with their kind of like lack of frontliners. But the problem is that Amumu is a tier 5. So Amumu is a tier 5 Inferno Warden, and his ability is Curse of the Sad Mummy. He explodes in an infernal tantrum, deals a bunch of magic damage to all enemies within 2, 3, or 4 hexes, and then it stuns them for 2 seconds. So it's a tier 5, but I've been thinking of this for Inferno is like the equivalent of Singed for poison. Amumu makes it pop off. Yeah, Amumu 3 basically like deletes people. It literally does elite magic damage. But even Amumu 2, in my opinion, is strong because like positioned right, you're going to hit all enemies within 3 hexes for a good amount of damage and stun them. And if you've got Inferno going, you're also going to trigger the Inferno hexes. And then because they're stunned, they can't move. So then they take the damage from that. Inferno's getting a bit of an adjustment as well, so you'll see that in a minute. There's some interface updates. Oh, there's also apparently just my web browser crashing. No big deal. All right, some interface updates. Mostly, they're changing XP and refresh, so if you don't use hotkeys, pay attention to that as far as like their locations. You're also getting a return to home button for when you're viewing other people's boards, and I believe it's also on the carousel. So when you're on the carousel, you can hit your home button to check out your team, if you will, and then go back, which is really nice because if you ever go to the carousel and then you're like, oh crap, what items did I have? Then you can quickly check. Where's Firefox? Firefox is also on my machine. You can do it already, but it gives you a button. These interface changes, even though they don't come right out and say it, if I'm being honest, I think these are part of their prep for mobile. Because on mobile, you're not going to be able to use hotkeys. So, in my mind, that's what these are doing. And then you've got the adjustments. So first the trait adjustments. Berserker, at 6 Berserkers, you now also get plus 25 attack damage for all your Berserkers. Cloud is basically getting a 5% dodge buff all the way around to make it feel a little more relevant. Electric getting a pretty reasonable buff on tier 2 and 1, in my opinion. So you go from 70 to 100 damage and 250 to 300. I think Electric has the potential to like really sneak up on some folks. Like this is, I don't know, with like Zed electric comps, this is kind of scary. Like this is a bigger deal than it looks. You might be thinking it's not because there's only a few electric units, but this is scary. All right, so Inferno changes, and I find these very interesting. The effect triggers on spell damage is how it currently works, but it's going from that to triggering on spell damage and critical strikes. So it's not just spells, but it's going to be spells and crits. So to adjust for like increase in what's likely frequency, you're also going to have bonus damage going from 80, 175, 250 down to 70, 120, 180. But the other difference though is that this was over 5 seconds where now it's over 4. So you're going to hit it more frequently. You're going to do less damage over time, but your time is shortened. So in many ways, this is kind of still a buff, right? Like, don't let these numbers fool you. Between triggering on crits and this over 4 seconds as opposed to 5, like, this is a buff. And then the big one that I think is also interesting is hexes that light on fire, like per when the damage is dealt, are going from 111 to 135. So if you have 6 Inferno units and you like crit something, it's going to light up 3 hexes. And I know that that's because they want it so that, you know, units that are in motion still take some of that damage. But I really feel like these changes to Inferno are going to make this potentially pretty viable. This plus the addition of Amumu. Because theoretically, with the addition of Amumu on Inferno boards where Kiana's available, you only need 1 spatula to get to tier 3, which is also why I think this 180 is so far down from the 250. I think that they nerfed this because of the frequency of hitting this. Now that you don't have to rely on Lux is part of that. Light gets a minor bump for tier 1 and 2, just extra 5% attack speed bonus. Ocean, only tier 2 gets a minor adjustment, but honestly, like, I just like this aesthetically, right? It always felt weird that it went 15, 35, 60, where it just like doubling itself. But it's a small nerf. Rangers, chances for their attack speed bonus activation go up at tier 1 and 2. At tier 3, you have a 100% chance to activate a 2.5 times attack speed bonus. So I imagine you're going to see some folks trying at least 6 Rangers and likely stacking Ashe as your carry because her ability is pretty bonkers as well. Shadow gets some adjustments because they're adding Senna, and so they even put the quote here: with the addition of Senna, we restructured the trait from 2 and 4 to 3 and 6 for the tiers, as she was making it too easy to access the top end. Yeah, Marksman, you're also reading my mind with the Ranger Nocturne. However, I don't think that there's a spatula item to make Rangers. That was the first thing I thought of as well, and then I remembered there's not a Ranger spatula. There's Bladesman, there's Assassin, there's no Ranger. Sad panda. So besides just going from 2 and 4 to 3 and 6, Shadow Champions gain bonus damage for 4 seconds. It resets when they participate in a takedown, and the bonus is now 70 and 140. So it also is getting a bit of a nerf there as well. And then Summoners are getting a nerf to tier 1 and a buff to tier 2 because the 3 Summoner package is very splashable and you see a lot of people do it. So health and duration goes from 40 to 30 on tier 1, but if you really commit to the Summoners, then you go from 100 to 120. So you get it back on the top end. And then there's individual champion adjustments. Tier 1, if you're familiar with the meta, these should be no shocks. Ivern has the tier 2 and tier 3 shields nerfed. Maokai's passive heal for tier 2, or excuse me, I say tier 2, for stars. So 2-star, 3-star nerfed, 2-star, 3-star nerf for Maokai. Renekton, 2-star, 3-star spell healing nerfed. So in other words, your hyper roll squad's taking a bit of a hit. Is this enough to make them not viable? I don't know, but they're definitely taking a hit. Nico gets a bit of a buff. Her attack range goes up. Yasuo's attack damage goes up. At tier 3, Aatrox total mana goes from 85 to 70, so this is essentially the amount of mana required for him to activate his ability. So it just means he'll use it that much sooner, that much more frequently. Sivir attack damage goes up. And this is one of the reasons why I think, you know, Renekton gets hit, but I think the Desert Blademaster build is getting some help because it's not that much better, but Cloud's getting a minor bump, Yasuo's getting a minor bump, Sivir here is getting a minor bump. Soraka's attack range goes up and attack speed goes up. That's overall good for them. Tibbers taking a hit, both in health and armor. Brand taking a hit as well, except for on 3-star. If you 3-star Brand now, you just delete teams. Malphite ability damage going up at all levels. I'm very excited for this as somebody who already is a huge fan of Malphite. Yorick Ghoul health is essentially just going way up if you 3-star it. Like, I don't know why they felt like that was required. But then again, it's not impossible. I've personally 3-starred a Yorick, and I did win that game. Yeah, level 2 Malf looks really good, right? Like, even more so if you're like me and you're always making him your mage to drop LeBlanc when you get that spatula. Taric total mana just means he'll cast his ability faster. This comes down. Singed ability damage is also taking a hit at 1 and 2 stars, which I'm not surprised by because he's a bit of a tank. Lux total mana comes down by 5 just to cast a little bit sooner, and then at 1 and 2 stars is getting an ability damage buff. And then finally, as far as like item changes go, and again, in my opinion, some of these are even further hits to the Eggroll comp. Phantom Dancer now only negates the bonus damage from critical strikes rather than dodging the entire attack. It's not reflected on the tooltip, but it's there. This is one of the reasons why you could make the unkillable Renekton. Because if you put Phantom Dancer on him, he just straight dodged every critical strike. It gave him % dodge chance on regular strikes. You put Dragon Claw on him, he never took damage there. And then if you put some other health item on him, Warmogs was the common one. Like he was just huge. So like this is a huge hit to Phantom Dancer. Huge. Reduce the likelihood of class items appearing on Dragon. This is both a blessing and a curse. If you really needed that class item, you're less likely to get it, but it's also a blessing because it means you're not hopefully going to get the like light item when you're not running light. And then re-enabled a bunch of items to drop from Dragons and the Rift Herald again. So now it's only Thieves' Gloves, Force of Nature, and Hydra that will not drop. And then Giant Slayer gets a minor bump from 8 to 9%, which, again, minor, but I'm excited for it because with Lucian being added, with Sivir getting a bit of an attack damage buff, like I'm really excited to explore on-hit builds. You always get the dang Glacial? Right, like I always feel it's light for me. Unless I'm actually going light, but if not, I always get light. So these are the changes. These will be in effect tomorrow. So in my opinion, like the big things are Eggroll took a lot of hits between the items and the individual units. I'd be shocked if people were still trying that. I expect a lot of people to experiment with Soulbound and Inferno because they're kind of the poster children of this patch. I think Inferno looks pretty scary. Again, you don't really have a good front line, but until Amumu comes online, and even then it's just the one unit. But the fact that you're at 6 Inferno triggering 3 hexes per, it's a shorter damage over time timer, and you're hitting like 3 hexes. I think that's got a lot of potential. We'll have to test obviously to see, but I think it's there. So I think those are winners. Mages aren't really hurt a ton. You get Ocean got hit a little bit, Brand got hit a little bit, but you also got the Malphite buff. So I don't know, maybe it washes, because that Malphite buff is a pretty big deal. Electric, I expect a lot of electric. Again, I think that's the sneaky one. I think Inferno and the Soulbound stuff will be more in your face, but I think the electric one is pretty scary. That's a lot of damage for something that you only... Like, realistically, if you just run Ornn, Volibear, and Zed, and then you can just work them through a number of different builds, that's a pretty big deal.